Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to our afternoon session, Designing the New Community College. So this is in response to, we're really excited to have these chancellors, former chancellors, and other luminaries to talk about what has really been kind of a bold experiment to look at how the community college needs to evolve, and thinking about what learners are asking the community college to be for them in terms of voting with their feet. What are they asking for, and what employers are asking the community college to be. And so we embarked on this experiment at the beginning of COVID, not knowing that this would be such a challenging time, but it actually accelerated what we were trying to, the demand that we were starting to see even before COVID. And so the experiment was, can we design a new class of credentials that are sub-degree, but that respond to what learners were asking for and employers were asking for, which is a faster path to a livable wage that might stack to a degree, but starts with a credential of market signal value. And this is something that community colleges were doing a little bit, have been doing in the vocational space, but could they actually think about shifting? What would it look like to kind of shift their way of thinking to have this be one of their, potentially one of their primary ways that they deliver value to their communities as sort of talent broker for the 60% of people maybe who aren't going to get a degree, and that's a majority of Americans. And so I'm Kathleen deLaski. I'm from the Education Design Lab, and this is what we do. This is a great expression of what we do. We work with colleges and communities and states and employers to try to help deliver and design and deliver what does this next era of higher education look like for the people for whom college was not invented in the first place. And so we've worked with about 900 colleges, and we have some of our best folks here today. So I'm going to introduce folks, and then we'll talk a little bit about what are these micro pathways is the expression or the actual credentials that we've been creating. And so let me just go down the aisle and ask everyone to just introduce themselves first, and then we'll get started.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Lee Lambert, and I'm the Chancellor of the Pima Community College District located in Tucson, Arizona. We're just about an hour from the border.
Good afternoon. My name is Rufus Glasper. I'm the president for the League for Innovation in the Community College, and I am Chancellor Emeritus of the Maricopa Community Colleges, Metro Phoenix, and it's probably about 4 or 5 hours from the border.
Good afternoon, Shouan. I serve as the Chancellor of Seattle Colleges, college district with 3 colleges. I used to work for this gentleman. He was my boss for many years.
So the experiment that you all embarked with us upon started in 2020, and the charge was we had 11 colleges in the first cohort. So you see Tucson and Seattle represented here. We also had the entire city of New York, the CUNY system, the entire state of Indiana. We had Austin Community College and Prince George's Community College, which is right outside Washington, D.C. So that was the initial cohort. And the charge was to build in one academic year 3 or more of these micro pathways that would lead to a credential of value. And for the second year, to enroll students, in it, learners in it, and to see what the outcomes were. And so we've got an evaluation plan. And we had several funders the first year, and what's interesting is you were asked to do 3 pathways each, and they actually developed 30 pathways together and have already launched. 1,500 students have been through the pathways already now. We're starting to see some early indicators. And more importantly than that, right, we're seeing what it takes to evolve to be a community college of the future. So we'll talk about that some on the panel too, because that's been really the most exciting thing for the lab to watch, is how it's been a wedge gateway for you all to think about transformation. So the pathways have been in fields ranging from IT to residential construction, to advanced manufacturing, healthcare, and several others. We have several criteria for these pathways that are required really in order to them to qualify as a micro pathway. I won't go through them all, but the key ones really are must be able to be completed in less than a year, must stack to a degree and be visibly so that the learner can see, okay, I can do this now, I can work, I can come back, or I can do something in parallel. And another really key one that I'm very excited about is that the pathways are required to have a 21st century skill credential embedded in them. In other words, that has to be part of the learning stack. And that's because most people are not doing a liberal arts degree that are on these pathways. And so yet we find that employers are looking for those skills. Often that's the first skill they're looking for, the first set of skills. So collaboration, communication, resilience, things like that. So those are required to be part of the pathway. So that's a little background, and now we'll get started because you want to hear from the chancellors, not from me. So I want to start the first question, and we can go. Actually, we'll have Lee answer and Shouan answer, and then Rufus. Tell us, what did you learn in this design year and this launch of these micro pathways? What did you learn about your learners, and what did you learn about the employers in the community that you're trying to serve?
So I think one of the big takeaways for us was we all assume that, or we presume, that employers know what they want. And it'll sound like it on the surface, right? I want someone who can be a critical thinker, I can be a problem solver, and I need someone to do X, Y, and Z in terms of technical pieces. Well, then if you go down to the next level of discussion, what do you exactly mean by a critical thinker? Sometimes they can't answer your question. Mm-hmm. And so what this has allowed us to do, because using the T profile and across the horizontal part of the T, it breaks down those 21st century competencies into subcomponents. So if you look at, for example, critical thinker, one aspect of that is can spot patterns. Mm-hmm. And that's important because when you start to share that with the employer, yes, that's what I want. So I think one big takeaway is don't presume that an employer actually knows what they want when they tell you X, Y, and Z. You have to go a little further to help understand exactly what they mean by that.
Right, so just explaining the T profile, that's one of the tools that we use in the design process where the employer's coming in and working with the college to say, okay, we're trying to hire for this job role, you're doing like advanced manufacturing, for example, and they name the skills that need to be in the role, and so they're co-designing together. Yeah.
Yes, so Seattle Colleges, for the learners, as Kathleen mentioned in the beginning, for sure, because of the COVID-19 impact, so many folks in our community, 600 people in the first 6 months, 600,000 get laid off in Seattle or King County area. So this new majority learners are looking for stackable credentials that really leads to a career, either improvement or a new degree. So for that reason, we established 5 micro pathways. And really students responded well. The other thing from the part of the the business partners in the community, we thought we may have trouble in recruiting them, but it turned out our recruiters, the hospitals, Seattle Children's Hospital worked with us, established the health IT. They not only help us recruit, they put money on the table, says students, if you come into us, we give you scholarships. We have construction, micro pathways. It's a couple who run a design shop in the Seattle area for years, could not find folks other than those trained people with a master's degree to do design, but it's the technician level they have trouble recruit. So when they found out we're doing this, first cohort in winter quarter, 40 students, they give us $30,000 to give students scholarships. So the needs, it's out there. The needs is out there. They're still working with us, this young couple. You met Courtney.
Yeah.
who really very gung-ho. So for sure, the new majority learners are the ones that need easy way to get access to credentials, allowing them to new skill sets while they're working or they're taking care of their family.
Rufus.
So I'm in the middle of these two. My role, I spent 30 years at the Maricopa Community Colleges. And as part of that transition, I also served as a trustee to one of the regional accreditors. And what we're trying to do in this space of innovation and, quite frankly, education moving at the speed of industry that's the mantra that I'm trying to push. And I'm trying to look at some of the roadblocks for us to move from the notion of 16-week, 8-week, to what is it that our colleges can do, and including the embedding of the skills that Lee talked about, because the employers will tell us we do a good job in terms of the technical training, but as we're saying, the 21st century skills are not there. What this project has demonstrated, even with a micro-credential and a micro-pathway, it can happen. And it can happen within a shortened time frame, and it can happen with less cost to the student, and it can happen with less time to degree. And the voice that is coming from our faculty in many cases is a fear of what happens to the integrity of working 10 or plus years on what is described as a guided pathway. Every student that comes in, one of the first questions you would like to ask is, what is your intent? And they pick out an intent which leads to a 2-year degree or so because it's tied to financial aid. So how do you move beyond the notion that if we are to meet the needs, and I'll use one of Shouan's major suppliers in the Seattle area, but there's also in Phoenix, and that's Boeing. Boeing came to one of our colleges and said, we need 425 harness workers, and we need them as quickly as you can. We go back to our process, and they say, we need to go to our curriculum committee, which will take us 8 to 10 months, and we need X, Y, and Z. And they said, how about 8 to 10 weeks? So the notion is, how do you change the mindset? How do you remove the barriers or make the barriers less of an issue and address the need that there are many unemployed, that a short-term credential can be stackable, that you can move in and out of the workplace, and you can meet your goal, and you can move up to what is described as a livable wage.
That's really interesting. So on the strength of what these gentlemen are talking about, we had so much interest as the first cohort was getting going that a second cohort was launched this past February. So we now have 22 colleges, including the state of Colorado, now the city of Phoenix as well, many of those community colleges, and several others that are involved in a second cohort. And so we are starting to build a, let's call it a library or a repository of these micro pathways that other colleges are coming and saying, wow, we want to use this. We see that you built one around aerospace or around residential construction. We'd like to use that. How do you see micro pathways as being helpful to building your design and your curriculum? Lee, you describe universal design. You think about it as something that can maybe influence your whole university or your whole college.
Right. So I challenged my team to really think about when we're developing a curriculum that we develop the curriculum with the micro pathway in mind. And so it's not like you're doing something completely different with the micro pathway. It's already part of the pathway that you're building. And then how do you take out the first component of it for a learner to have greater access? And so I'll use automotive as an example. So every automotive technician has to learn how to use a multimeter because there's electric currents running through the car, right? They all have to learn how to use that. Well, what if we pulled that out and made it the first entry point into the automotive technician, service technician pathway? So that's what we did. But we didn't just do it on our own. We sat down with the employers and said, when you look at what a technician has to have, what would be the least skill that they would have to have in order for you to employ them on an entry level? And they said multimeter. And then we added in the 21st century piece. What would you need to see from that lens? And it was the critical thinking. So we built that, and I believe that's a little over, I think 12 weeks roughly, just for those two pieces. But that gets them on the pathway now. So you're going from a non-credit piece, but it was designed with the credit in mind. So it's easy articulation right over. I can tell the student right up front, this is how many credits that's going to translate to if you choose to do that. We're on a pathway with a ladder and wage progression, and that employer is willing to hire you long before you actually complete the whole pathway. So, I mean, I think that's the advantage of all of this. And if we talk about it from an equity lens, we can get more of our students of color employed, earning and learning at the same time. And that's been a huge value in this as well. And move away from this false distinction of credit and non-credit. That is BS, and we all know it. It's all about skills. And this is starting to show that that's what it's all about in the end of the day. It's about skills.
But it is, however, so this distinction between credit and non-credit has been such a huge piece for you, right? Because you're seeing that you're starting most of these pathways on the what they call on the non-credit side, right? But that side of your institutions is not supported by federal financial aid, by advising, and other things as well. How are you dealing with that? And what does it say to you? Do you want to take that?
Well, very similar to what Lee described happening in Tucson. Seattle College happened to have 14, 15 bachelor's degree program already. We have mostly we're still two-year community colleges. So when we design, we look at we involved about 20 to 25 participants in the community to get what is the most area you have difficulty finding employees. With that, we look at our bank of our associate degree and bachelor degree, so we come up with the top 5. And so when we design the curriculum, we keep in mind what the employer needed, what we have, so they're transferable, articulable. So we know, as Lee said, it's a direct articulation from the non-credit to the credit side. I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
Yeah. Basically, how is the non-credit, like how are you, if most of these are on the non-credit side,
right.
Again,
it is, though we know when we design it, those break down the associate degree, bachelor degree requirements, objectives, chunk them into the micro pathways. That's what we did. In other words, when you do this, later on, you don't have to repeat the courses for this degree because they're already chunked within the framework of the associate degree or bachelor's degree.
So that's how you're able to
Yes.
show the pathway, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But I want to build off of something Rufus said, that speed to getting it done can't be done on the credit side.
Yeah.
And that's why this is so important. But then going to your the dollar side of this, right? So Maricopa and Pima had the unenviable distinction in the nation to be the first 2 community college districts to receive no state aid. Wow. So I don't get any money from the state of Arizona. So we figured out how to rethink our funding model. I had to adjust to that reality. And then as I was doing that, I could adjust now to this reality. So the money's there sometimes, but you got to go about things a little differently. And so we figured out a way to do that. I can't do that for every program, but I can do it for some programs.
When I came to the Maricopa system in '86, I was on the finance side of the house, and we were 28% funded. By 2015, both of our institutions were 0. And we produced 80% of the full-time equivalent students in the state. Wow. The model that we were using was bringing in students. It was at a lower cost, so the state said that you kept bringing in students, so we thought you could continue to do it with no money. So what we're trying to get at now in my role at the league is to do a couple of things. To try and vet community college leaders that have the mindset and the ability and the willing to engage with faculty to think differently than the traditional paradigm. I'm making a prediction that within 5 to 7 years, the notion of credit and non-credit will be gone. It'll be a non-issue at this point. The state of Maryland has funded credit and non-credit programs at the same rate for over 20 to 25 years. Everyone in the nation is separating them. And as we look at that distinction, we have a separation with faculty, and we have a separation with staff, and we have a separation with speed. We have created corporate colleges across the systems, community college systems, in order to respond more rapidly. I mentioned the Higher Learning Commission as an accrediting agency and me being a trustee before I went to the league. The requirements for credit is that you have a master's degree in the area and/or a master's degree plus 18 hours in the area. What I am doing is working with the accrediting agencies now to talk about what happens when we start to proliferate all of these micro-credentials and micro-pathways, and the faculty that we need happens to be a construction worker that has been out there for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years and can provide more value to coming in than those who have been in the classroom. And what happens to your visitation teams? Well, what kind of quality assurance are you looking for now that would allows us to move faster and not have faculty members and others say accreditation will not allow us to do that? Now, this is a question for the audience. How many of you are aware that there were 6 regional accreditors across the U.S. As of last summer, there are how many regional accreditors across the U.S.? And the answer is 0, because their boundaries no longer exist. The boundaries no longer exist.
Yep.
So the accreditor that will have the best standing, in my mind, will be the one that is able to move faster, quicker, and better, and more innovatively to meet the new norms of the workplace, the new norms of the faculty, the new norms of the business and industry, and you will start to see the seamless discussion. There was also, in our prior presidential administration, a focus around having financial aid be in the hands of students. I think that that will be a movement that you will see soon. And who will want to pay to sit in a classroom for 16 weeks or more? Because the only way they can do it is to get financial aid. But if it gets in their hands, they'll spend it more wisely than we do in terms of monitoring from an institution. So I'm kind of the gatekeeper on both ends. Does it work? Does it not work? How do we calm this group down? And what's the next new idea in order for us to keep moving? And Education Design Labs, and by the way, full disclosure, I sit on their board. I'm still working with the regional accreditor, and I'm trying to be that bridge to say, don't think about common sense. And by the way, you learned a new professional word, chunk. So I just want to
chunk it up, right, exactly. Yeah. Right, well, we are chunking the curriculum one micro pathway at a time, right?
But the chunk piece is important because you're chunking those pieces that allow you to get a job, that allow you to be employed. And you said that. This is what allows you to be employed, these two things.
Right.
Then we build on that.
So I want to hear from...
One word that is very important. This does not mean less quality or lowering standard.
Right.
The employers still demand you can problem solve, you can turn out products. So that we need to be very clear.
Right, that actually leads to the next question, which is we set out to create a new class of credentials that are shorter, that are shorter term, but that have market value. How do you think, Dr. Penn, how is that going? Do you see our learners, how are they responding, and how are employers responding?
Well, in the 3 of those micro pathways we created, the employers clearly said these are the standards. We want the students to have them, both on the soft skill side, but they insist not just the technical skills, the willingness to work with diversity people, difficult patients, or different customers, but you all know how to problem solve. You have the technical skills. Those have to be combined. We heard it very loud and clear from employers. We need both the hard skills, the technical side, but also soft side. In one of the micro pathways, project management and has smaller, but those adult students, they have been working, so they understand what we mean by soft skills. So for that small cohort group, the students have no issue. They understand, yes, I need to learn how to work problem solve, working with a team, diversity, interpersonal skills, and all of that. So it depends on the student who are entering into the cohort.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask, so we all know that enrollment at community colleges has declined by 10% over the last decade, and in some colleges up to 20% just during COVID, and particularly among communities of color. So will this new model, or could this new model, save community college enrollment? Because we do see that this is the type of program that a lot of these learners are looking for, and your numbers are up in this model. So can this be the role of the new community colleges, or how much of it? Do you want to take that, Lee?
Sure, and I'll link this back to your earlier question too. So short answer is this is not going to be the silver bullet, but what it does reflect is a mindset shift that will be essential to addressing the enrollment challenges, because one piece of it is relevancy. Are we relevant anymore to the needs of the community in terms of the learners and business and industry? But also there's realities, right? People aren't having babies. We can't get around that reality. We're not supportive of immigration. I mean, those have been two big drivers of, opportunities for growth, and they're not there any longer. So, and then colleges and universities are getting a bad rap, and it has problems, and we've done it to ourselves. I'll give you an example. One of my employees' brother's son, got his degree and couldn't get a very good job. So guess what the kids don't want to do now? I'm not going to go to college and go into debt to be like my brother, my sister. You get the idea, right? That's working. By the way, that's backfiring on us. And it's amplifying, I think, especially in communities of color. And so we have to own that as a sector. We have failed at some level. But I don't hear us talking about our failures. We're always talking about ours. And it's not that it's a bad thing. I think when you accept that we got a problem, we need to fix it, then we can fix it. And that's what you're seeing us do here. We realize we've got to solve a problem we've created on our own, and we have a way now, thanks to the partnerships with the Ed Design Lab, with the League for Innovation, and so many others. So let me come back to this other component. So when we launched our micro pathways, I was able to go to one of our philanthropists in the community and say, because he needed a problem solved. He just launched what he called the Center for Opportunity through the Gospel Rescue Mission to serve the homeless, folks who were previously incarcerated, folks who've been drug abusers, to get them back into society. But one key piece that he knew he had to do was job training. So he came to me and said, can you do the job training, short term, get them on the right path again? I said, I can do that, but I'm going to need your help. So he says, how much do you need? So he wrote me a check for $250,000, told me he was going to raise another $250,000, and then guess what? We are up to $1 million. All because of this work here, connecting to the dots. And now the city of Tucson, I was just on the call with the city manager, it was Thursday, Friday of last week. He says, we're willing to commit to hiring these individuals who go through this program, even though they may not have all the skills we need. You get them that 21st century skill, get them at least one technical skill, we'll employ them into an earn-to-learn model. It's happening. It's happening. And I'm so excited because we couldn't have done this without starting to connect these dots.
Mm-hmm. So that really raises the big last question that we wanted to ask. So if a college starts out working on micro pathways as a sort of a gateway strategy to transformation, the other pieces, we've actually together named the other work that has begun, that we see happening, and part of it is employer engagement that you just mentioned. It's the ability to almost become product developers of new pathways for for your learners and for your community members, right? Employer engagement is a piece of it. Marketing and transformation services for adult learners, like how do you attract adult learners? We also mentioned data tracking, which obviously that we have to figure out how to track these new credentials because they're not part of federal financial aid, and so they're not tracked often. And the other one is moving the non-credit to the credit side of the house. So I list these kind of pillars of the sort of transformation elements and components that we're talking about, and really want to ask you, how is this a gateway for transformation, and what do you see needing to happen? You had a comment in our prep call about how time is short, that if you could elaborate on that, what did you say, or tell us what you said if you can remember.
Well, I mean, folks need jobs now.
Right.
Employers need to employ people now. We don't have 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or even a year. So are we willing to start to think differently? And that's what you're seeing here. I mean, when the city of Tucson comes and says, I'm willing to try something different because they're desperate. And if they can't get their employees, guess what? There's a lot of services we're not going to get from our cities because they don't have workers. And you see the problem, it just amplifies. So I think that's what I was referring to is time is short, and people are looking to us to help them solve their talent needs. And if we can't do it, they're going to turn to somebody else to do it. But it's got to be like just in time.
And is the competition, when you say time is short, time is also short for community colleges. The traditional model is in trouble, right? Because you have your enrollment's dropping, and you already have very tight margins. That's how do you see that, Shouan?
Well, I certainly agree. The time is short. Not only we have real people in our community who need help. They lost the job. They're worried about the next rent. They're worried about people getting sick at home. So that's also, we got to be part of the solution. That's our mission. That's how we were founded, to be a solution for economic development, for education attainment in our community. So not only in the issue of the keyword that Lee said, relevance, it's also agility. Ability for our organization to quickly put together a program that respond to the needs of learners and the business in our local community. That's truly being equitable, truly meaning staying true to our mission. So it's agility, it's relevance. It's the other thing, if micro pathways may not be solve our fill the hole of enrollment gap, but it stretch our ability. It forces us to rethink, to act differently. I think that's the value. As this is a prophet, he said, in 7 years, we'll see.
Yeah.
That day is coming. I think those colleges who are thinking through, who are willing to take risks, will get ahead of the game.
There's a lot of competitors outside in the hall having meetings right now about how they're going to disrupt you.
Right.
So that was part of what you said about time is short. We don't have a lot of time before someone else eats our lunch.
Can I just add a context for that? So Credential Engine, those of you know who are familiar with Credential, there's almost 1 million unique credentials out in the marketplace. Guess how many providers there are? Over 55,000. Wow. So if you just look at it from a college and university standpoint, I think Rufus said it earlier, there's just a few thousand of us. That means there's a whole bunch of people out there who are wanting our business, and they're taking our business, and I think they're really cutting into the community colleges. This is a matter of time. I think they cut into the regional universities, and who else going forward? I don't know, Rufus, you might want to build off of that.
What I will share is that the Higher Learning Commission just completed its conference this week during the same time. They may still be going on for another day. They just published a document, and the document talks about short-term credentials, the value of comparing it to traditional degrees, and part of the committee included over 26 different organizations, Credential Engine, WorkCred, and others. The league was represented, and it talks about what do these credentials mean? How do we evaluate them? What are their values? Who's coming to the market? So it's putting, I'll use the term pressure on accrediting agencies to at least take a stand one way or the other. I would like to talk about, we're talking about first generation, new coming to college. Think about our working adults. Many of our colleges now, the working adults are 32, 34 years old. That's a market that can benefit from the conversations that we are having. In addition, we're using words more consistently now like work-based learning, variable schedules, talking to students in junior high to get them aligned to a profession as they look at technology and other types of certs along the way. We cannot look at a lockdown schedule and say that we're going to support our students who is a working adult, who has a calendar, who has all of these family obligations and others. We need to think about adjusting our schedule. Yep. And I think it's possible for us to do this. And I want to add one other thing, at least that Earn to Learn. Earn to Learn started off as part of a funding initiative left over from one of the federal pockets. And Earn to Learn matches $500, 8 to 1. It's an 8 to 1 match. 8 to 1. That funding has been exhausted. We're now trying to get funding. It's run by a young lady in Tucson. Kate? What's her last name? Hoffman. No, Kate Hoffman. And Earn to Learn has been used in the university systems in the state of Arizona. Has been now, I know Pima is using it, but it is a model that we're looking at nationwide that's available to any student. All they have to have is $500 to get $4,000. And it is money that's there. With all the money that was put out in the HERF funding, when those monies go away, the community colleges and other educational institutions will start to see the largest decline in funding sources in the next 2 years or so that has ever existed in the system, in education. And I'm speaking from the community colleges and as previously a chief financial officer, and this is the reality. So I think this is an opportunity. Is it the Mecca? The answer is no. But do we need to change? We're not going back to normal, whatever that was, but we're creating the next normal.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, that's really helpful to end on a positive note, as opposed to the funding is declining and in 2 years we're really in trouble. I think that community colleges can change. We're seeing that. Let's see if we can go to the audience for maybe 1 or 2 questions. We have about 2 minutes left on the clock. We have one back here. Yes?
I was wondering,
Oh, let's go.
I was wondering how, if you could talk a little bit about how you engage the employers in this process of creating your micro-credentials?
Right, does one of you want to take that? Either.
Well, first of all, we already have relationships with these employers, so now it's just about saying, what about this idea? And so so we're able to do that. We have over 700 documented employer engagement partnerships that have been working very well for us.
But we also do have some national partnerships where we bring in like the Manufacturing Institute, and we've worked, for example, with AWS across different regions to help when a college does not have the relationship with the employers, that's where the lab comes in to try to help.
So in some cases, in addition to existing relationship, we look at, we analyze our regional data. We made cold calls.
Yeah.
Hospital, this is what we see. We were thinking about how do you think? So it's some cold calls as well the existing relationship.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more. Let's go right here in the front. Yeah.
Curious what you think of the role of remote workplace here. Is it like what are the challenges for like engaging employers to provide like remote jobs to students? And is that something that you view at odds with your mission of like serving the local community and local communities?
Great question. Probably just one person. Do you want to take that?
Go ahead, Shouan.
Well, because of COVID-19, Seattle, we have quarter system. Most of them done were virtually. And there are a couple of times the employee bring people together, everybody wear masks, but it was done virtually.
Right. Well, thank you very much. This has been excellent hearing from you all about your experience, and we plan to continue to work with this group of colleges and probably additional cohorts. We're getting a lot of calls from other colleges, so if you have questions, we can stay after. I also wanted to thank our funders. We have 13 national and regional funders now that are helping to make this work possible, so if any of you are in the room, thank you very much. And with that, we'll end our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.